So we are talking about powerful storytelling with motion and stills. This is in fact the film that I was talking to you about. So let's watch it, and then we'll diagnose it, and we'll have some fun. Who got a bit emotional with that? You can sort of see yourself in that story somewhere. You may have kids, you may have a baby, you may have fur babies. We can all respond to that. And without even having audio, apart from the music itself, we can sort of see how powerful that movement was. And this is where I'm saying is that if many of you are only photographing and not videoing, my suggestion is flick that switch. And if you're a filmmaker, flick that switch to photography. You'll get so much more value. So what I've been using here, this was the Nikon Z8. I deliberately use a small form factor gimbal, which is I think the RS3 gimbal, the one that's the smallest at the moment. And of course, we've got the MCN10 grip, which is pretty amazing as well. As I told you about there, guys, is that those arrows allude to that shutter speed on the bottom left there. I know it's elementary for you established filmmakers, but for those who have not shot film, it's really important to know that, again, your shutter speed should be double your frame rate. So in the top right, 24 frames a second, and then your shutter speed is double. In this particular case, again, this is 60 frames a second. And that's like traditional slow-mo. If you're doing 120 frames a second, make sure that your subjects are moving quite quickly. Otherwise, it won't sort of seem like anything is happening. So fast movement, 120 frames a second. Now let's walk through a couple of the scenes and break them down and show you how they were created. So this was the falling in love scene. So right here, I'm on a small form factor slider. I'm using the Nikon Z8, and now we have the 85mm f1.2 lens. I've got a neutral density filter there as well. Of course, it's very important when you're shooting like this. The cool thing is, because of my lighting experience with photography, I sort of know how to light, whether I'm backlighting, whether I'm side lighting, and creating movement and motion and feeling. And it's important that each scene that you're doing sort of blends into something else. Like you're thinking about the transition from one scene to the other, what's happening next. And the cool thing, now this is called a waveform. This is sort of like, think of it like your filmmaker's, histogram. When I think of a histogram, guys, an easy way to remember a histogram, you've got the shadows and highlights. Remember this, SH, shadows, highlights. Make sense? So if you forget about it, shadows are over here. From your perspective, highlights are over here. Waveform will tell you what's going to be exposed well and what's going to work. Here I deliberately panned up to give you guys an idea of what's going to happen. Now let me show you the proposal scene. This is actually in my house, and I'm actually directing Lisa. I've actually photographed them for about 10 years, and I photographed their wedding in Cabo a couple of years ago. So they were a perfect couple to play with here for this particular video, and that falling in love scene and things like that. So I'm giving her direction. I sort of want them to feel like they're going out. He's prepared all these sort of candlelight and everything like that, and he's doing the very traditional but cliche, but very sweet, bending on the knee there and showing what's going to happen as he proposes. And you need something to cut to, right? And I think that many of us who feel intimidated by filmmaking, we're all experts. How many TV shows have you watched in your life? How many movies have you watched in your life? What do you respond to? If you want a masterclass on filmmaking, watch Oppenheimer. Incredible movie that's out there at the moment. But this gives you sort of an idea of what's happening. And I'm using a 105mm macro lens right now. And then I'm deliberately silhouetting that particular ring with that there in the background. And then of course we transition, and I want to transition then to when they actually get married. So now we're having some fun. We're backlighting them, having a little bit of fun with them, giving them some direction, establishing my shot, understand what I'm doing. I was first going to use a diffuser, and then I thought, wait a second, let me actually have some fun with the sun here. So I'm using a Satchler tripod, which they're the best on the market at the moment, I think. There's no better than Satchler. They are very expensive, but they're the best. So this, as you remember with the film, transitions perfectly with the spinning of the actual couple there as well. And this is at 60 frames a second, I think it was. So you get the idea of that beautiful dreamy quality. Also, guys, if you are filming, slow-mo is a lot more forgiving. So think of it like that. If you want to go slow-mo, it's a lot more forgiving with your movements. And here I had to establish, like we bought some flower petals from Amazon, and then we just took a few steps back. I made sure that they threw everything in, because how am I going to get the budget to have a real ceremony at a real church or whatever it may be and have all these guests? But I needed to tell the story without showing too much. And of course, putting this within a 2-minute period is actually quite tough, but you see the results here. So that's the real motion. But then when you render it in slow motion in post-production, you can sort of see how dreamy it looks and how beautiful it looks also once it's color graded. Now, you'd also think that, the cameras these days, how can they keep focus on a subject with such low light? I was just amazed at the Nikon Z8's capability to actually follow that focus and that eye focus the whole time. Normally, you'd have a separate person on a production team that have a little monitor and a focus puller, and their entire job is to focus. The cinematographer usually will compose, do what they do, but someone else will actually focus. But now the fact that you can just come from literally slide behind a tree, it keeps the focus on them the entire time with such low light is incredible. So it's basically just opened up the realms of possibilities when you're filmmaking. But I really love this process, again, because I geek out about people, I love relationships, and seeing these guys, their story evolve with this whole process was absolutely a joy. And also, I'm a big fan of puppies. I've got 2 golden doodles at home. I love them to death, so I had to include them in a story. This one, the little version of the dog is not mine. It's my filmmaking partner Jason's a dog. She's very, very sweet. So now they're preparing to have a baby. Let's graduate from a dog to a baby. So now he's giving a gift, It's obviously really sunny, so a really big scrim's going to really help you. This was an 8x8 foot scrim, Jim, from Westcott. And we're shooting with the slider as well, and a bit of a slow-mo. And you don't really need sound because you get the whole story from the visuals. And don't worry, no dogs were harmed in the making of this film, and we had plenty of treats, and we cooperated really well, which was really fun. It's like, wait a second, let me just get him. Okay, we understand that you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, but it's okay. The story will be told, and we spoiled her afterwards. Then we open up, the dog comes out. So it's really important, again, like what do you want the person watching this to feel? Because I was celebrating our 12-year anniversary, I wanted you to feel the love that I have for people and my relationship. I want you to feel that. So that's the thing is I think many of us geek out about technique, but the technique, if you geek out about it, has to actually allow you to experience a feeling or an emotion. And that gives you sort of an idea side by side. And of course, if you're shooting in flat mode, that you can render colors afterwards, you need to shoot in a flat sort of color profile so that it gives yourself some room to grow afterwards. Now, this shot that I'm about to show you was very, very difficult. This was one gimbal move. So this is a bird's eye view of me doing it. So I wanted to give the impression of time lapsing. So I filmed them walking with a little dog, and then I came right around with the gimbal. It was very hard to do. And then it shows you, okay, so little dog, they're wearing different jackets and everything like that. To change their jeans and shoes would have been impossible. But then we spin around and now the dog's grown up. That's one of my golden doodles, Zoe. And she was one of the stars of the show. And then I'm like, okay, I want to get Zoe, who I famously jump in to the pool every day with in Vegas. I live in Vegas now, so you may hear my accent. I am Australian, so don't adjust your hearing aids. I live in Vegas, and twice a day I'm in my pool. And Zoe just jumps in the pool with me every day. So I'm like, I want to show this, but I don't have underwater housing for the Nikon Z8. What do? Well, let me get a fish tank. So I got a fish tank and I brought it in. I didn't realize the buoyancy, like you have to push it down, and it was almost impossible, but this sort of gives you sort of an idea. I think we've got a bit of audio for this as well.
Ready, Zoe?
So now we have an underwater perspective. So this might be an easy way for you guys to do some underwater stuff without actually having to pay for this crazy price for the exact housing for your camera. So that was really fun to do. Then we have the pregnancy scene.
Nice warm feel, Lisa, you're feeling gorgeous, sentimental, beautiful, nice wind going, go for it. Gorgeous.
My Amazon shopping cart for this shoot, I had to buy a pregnant belly, like a gel. I didn't want to put a basketball up there, but it was sort of like those gel bellies. A fish tank. I mean, I had random stuff. It was crazy. Then I'm like, I have to make her, like, well, how do we sort of signify that the baby is born? So I needed to create a hospital scene. So I also had those blankets, you know, those blue sort of cold blankets that you sort of find, and those gowns. If you don't know, I'm the inventor of the ice light. So if you've ever seen a cylindrical light source that looks like a lightsaber, that was my invention. And if you don't see one that's the ice light, that's a copy. I'm just letting you know that. But here is the ice light, sort of giving you an idea of what that scene looked like. Because behind the scenes, it looks quite elementary. But once you isolate the story, you really get a sense of it. So I wanted it to feel like overhead, sort of almost unattractive fluorescent lighting up above. So we put it over her head, and we wanted her to sort of evoke an emotion where she basically was just being handed the baby. So that was quite fun. And then I had a bottle of water, and I sprayed the sweat on her, so to speak. What I should have done is put warm water and sprayed it, but that was it, what it was. So now, she was great at all the romantic stuff and the fun stuff, but I just needed a fraction of a second where it felt real and she was being handed a baby. I bought a fake baby, by the way. But it has like the neck that it can turn, so I had to pose her hand in a way that hid the neck roll. Does that make sense? Ever seen American Sniper, or that movie where they have a fake baby? Like, no one wants to see a fake baby in a movie. So we did that as well. Now we have a real baby. So this was fun. So gorgeous kid, absolutely very, very sweet, but an absolute terror when we were filming this part of the process. So again, all I need is a fraction of a second. So I wanted the parents just having some fun and again, isolate the beauty. So there I am just filming sort of backlit. I just need a couple seconds of emotion there. So we hand the baby off. And again, we're shooting in a flat profile so that we've got somewhere to go. And then here I'm shooting with the gimbal. And it sort of gives you an idea of how that was done. But you sort of see that it looks very pedestrian on the outside in the BTS, but once you isolate it and put it to music, it ends up being quite amazing. Now this one, my hero, Zoe, oh my goodness. I honestly thought that this was not going to work.
She needs to stand directly in front
Watch
of you.
this.
But kindly.
You ready?
Yep.
You want me to call?
She's not going to be in focus the whole time. So the Nikon Z8 kept up at 2.8, 7 to 200 millimeter lens the whole way. If you had a focus puller, someone doing that manually, almost impossible to do that. The fact that it focused on the eye, and it's also very difficult to do it on the eye coming towards you. If it was actually parallel to the camera, it would be fine, but that was the best test of the eye focus for me. So then we had this dramatic actor for the teenage son, and we didn't even see his face, and this was resembling the kid growing up.
Now, you're not going to acknowledge them. You're at that age where you don't care about your parents, right? Okay. Except for mum, she's awesome, but your fake parents, you don't care about your parents. Okay, so as you walk past, I want you to just touch him on the head. So just do that, touch him on the head, and you don't care. So you're just not really acknowledging them at all. And then she waves. Now, as soon as you do this, I want you to like a little jump. Just like a cute little playful jump. And then you're like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. So as you do that, what I want you to do is give me try a little jump for me. I want to see what it looks like. Yeah, exactly, perfect. So when you jump, try to stay as much to the right as possible. So you're gonna think of it like your foot just misses this. Here you go. Action.
And best supporting actor.
Is it parallel to the ground? We've got nice vertical lines. Good. All right, ready? Action. Cute little jump. Left hand. A little sentimental hug.
That's perfect. I'm not that.
Yeah.
So it's important to give very clear direction as whatever you're filming. And obviously because they can't hear the sound, of course you can talk over what's happening, which ends up being a really fun thing. The fact that the Nikon Z8 kept focus in practical silhouette here and we kept detail in all those shadows was actually really, really cool. Now we have to resemble the passing of time and the kid's grown up and graduated. And now we've got another shopping to do on Amazon. I need 20 graduation hats. So they surrounded me. I was lying down on the ground. The first time it actually hit my face, not in a good way, and this was the second go. So this is me looking in the back of the camera, and I'm playing it back in slow motion, because what you saw was real time, of course. And we all celebrated because it was one of the final shots there, and it looked really, really cool. That's the thing about video. It's never a solo pursuit. It's very rarely solo. It's a production. It's a team involved, you know. So that gives you an idea of how that worked. So now, there's part of the story that you actually didn't see. Now, let me explain. So you saw the story, how it evolved from them falling in love, proposing, and all that kind of stuff, right to the end when they got older. The transitions were going to be the following. It was going to be a room, and I wanted to actually symbolize these guys growing older, but with an inanimate object and filming the corner of the room and showing objects that change. So let me show you what I was going to include, but sometimes more important about what you do include is what you exclude, but it actually makes for a fun story. So watch this. Okay, So now we have the couple. They're not really married yet. They're fit. They've got an exercise bike. We've got champagne glass and everything like that. We've got their photographs on the wall. Now you can see how very slowly the light's changing. Now they've had a really good night, quote unquote. As you can see, the clothes are on there. Then they've got a baby. And then we just move the light outside to create these moving shadows. We've got a coffee cup. Now they can afford a better side table. They've got a small dog. Now the dog grows up. And now they're getting older, they crochet. And then we've got a different bedspread. And now they've got a walker and pills and glasses. I mean, that's life, isn't it? But isn't it funny how you can actually show a story without showing a human at all? And I think that many of us have stories to tell. And I think that the difference between successful people and not so successful is that simply the successful are doers. You do something about it. You have a project in mind and you have some fun. All right. So let's progress and show you a few more little stories here. This was photographing now for the Nikon Z8 campaign. And this was a couple of a really cool portrait. This was using natural light coming through my garage door, and a beautiful little backlight there as well. And the cool thing is you've got split lighting on one, and then you've got sort of beautiful short lighting on the other, but this just shows you how that shot was taken. Right. Aiden, over here, mate. We'll get both of you. So you are going to be like this. So about here. Can we go? Don't be shy. Good. And then your left foot over there, mate. And then you're doing the same thing, but you're sort of just doing it together. Let's just button up. Come on, a little bit closer to me. Good. Stop there. Turn this way. Good. Take one step back. That's it. Now turn your face towards the light. And then hang your body and then tilt it back this way. So my recommendation to you is whenever you're photographing someone or filming them, you need to be very, very specific. You don't want to evoke emotion too quickly. Get the shot right, and then you can move forward with the emotion. And then I'm like, well, obviously we're photographing a same-sex couple, and they were very, very, very different in their sensibilities. And I wanted to show that with a bit of symbolism, a bit of a yin and yang vibe. And this was actually done by simply having a softbox to the right of them, a black flag on the left, and then a softbox actually giving us the main light source there as well. And then we had this shot, which was a lot of fun. So this was the light coming through the garage door. We've got a V-flat in front of her, and then we got some atmosphere aerosol away from me. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually using pinpoint focus to focus on her eye, or on her lips, pardon me.
Stop. Stop. Now, smoke, smoke, smoke.
So the more highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow you see in a shot, the more deeper and more depth it's going to be. Then I'm like, these performers in Las Vegas, I'm telling you, if you want self-esteem issues, photograph performers in Las Vegas. This girl said to me, I can do a handstand whilst doing the splits and holding the weight of another human being on my foot. Didn't think I'd hear that in a real sentence today, but yeah, go for it. So there it is, and then all of a sudden we get that. And people think it's Photoshopped. I'm like, yeah, it makes me want to stretch. Ironically, I posed this shot, and after they broke apart, they were actually more fatigued about this being posed than they were before, which just boggled my mind. I thought that was just really funny. But the idea is that, again, we tell stories and we have some fun. With this particular shot, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to actually get a hat, cut some holes in it, and then get a beam of light. So this was using an aperture 300 and a 26-degree beam. And then we illuminate through that particular area. And then this is the process of how that was done. Okay, so you are going to spray the shaft. Let's see what one looks like, but I just want the one from behind. Okay, again, your face and your body are clamped. Nothing can steer you away from that. Just lean back a smidge. That's it, just there. Good.
Right side. Eyes at me. Hit to tilt. Look that way. Good. Hit it with squint. Drama. Drama. Bit of breathing. There you go. That's better. That's better. Yes. Yes.
I call it the holy hat. I call it the holy. So again, another fun time sort of shopping on Amazon. Now, this is a perfect example for many of you in this room who are photographers and want to transition to filmmaking. Flick that switch. That was perfect for motion. So I did. Let's have a look. I mean, that could be part of a reel or a TikTok. It could be on your website repeating. There could be so many ways that you could actually use that particular flow. And also now with the tools that we have in post-production, I mean, there's so many things that we can do. Let's have a look here. Pardon me. Sorry, guys. Dun, dun. So the ability to have a blank canvas and photograph someone and repeat them many times. So here I actually purchased this material, went to a dressmaker and got this dress made, took these shots knowing what I was going to do in post-production, and then now you see it all come alive. And then you blend it in post-production, and it's crazy how that can work. So this has become a staple of mine. You might want to do this in different ways. So I'm like, all right, well, let me do something like this. Let me get the performer balancing on a lyra, for example. So she's now the fulcrum, the centerpiece of this particular shot. Then I need another shot to the left and another shot to the right because a triangular composition is very pleasing to the eye. And then we need to just throw the dress up now, for example. Then we get the right shot and then we blend it in for something really cool and very powerful. So from going from low key, now we're showing a high key version of this. For those of you who are intimidated by strobes and flash and not knowing what to do, here I'm actually just getting my fill light exposed correctly. And when I say that, it's not exposed correctly, it's not a good exposure, I'm just getting detail in the shadows. Now I want my main light source up above, which I've got, and now I'm ready to rock. Then I get her in flight and movement, which we do, and then we blend that in, and now we have some fun. So how cool is it that we can actually quickly flick that switch and either tell a story with filmmaking or a story with stills, and it be an incredible time to be in the photography industry. This gentleman here is a boxer, MMA fighter, so I said to him, I want a real struggle in your face. And then I wanted to fill in the gaps in the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. So I kept on shooting him. This was just one aperture light with a lantern softbox. And then I wanted a centerpiece behind him. And then I very crudely mock it up in post-production. So I put this here. I lessen the opacity to give myself a perspective. I lessen the opacity. And then that was the final result. Pretty fun, right? Now, you yourselves could be actually sitting on an image that you can use in post-production to create more of a story. So when you look at this particular shot, what are you seeing in composition? Yell it out. What are you seeing? Engagement. So it's a wedding photograph. So if you look at her veil, it's framing her, right? But it's only framing a quarter of her. In post-production, if I had a bigger canvas to work from, what could I do now on this particular photograph to get that veil to be framed properly around her? What do you think I could do? So you could flip it, right? So if I grab this image and then flip it, now it's actually framing the left and the right of her. And then if I flip it again, now all of a sudden I've got something really cool to do as well. So just know that you might be sitting on an image that can be manipulated and that you can have some fun with, and it works out really well. But guys, I know we're having a bit of Q&A now, is that right? A couple of Q&As. So yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties that we had at the start. It sort of stopped our flow a little bit, but we're all good. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask about photography or video or anything in general? You guys all good? 1 second, we'll just the gentleman over there first, and then over here next.
The ice light that you were talking about earlier, Is it battery powered, or is it like a lithium battery inside the light itself?
It's a lithium-ion battery, and we're working on the next version at the moment. So Lowlight 3 is on the horizon, so you guys know. We're very excited about it.
Hey, when you said you do flat settings on your camera, what do you mean? I mean, especially if we're not a Nikon camera. Canon,
So
for example.
every camera system, when you're filming, basically will have a RAW setting. So whether it's RAW video or whether it's a flat profile. So you know when you're shooting stills and you're shooting a particular picture control, and you're mainly shooting standard or whatever it comes as default. With filmmaking, there'll normally be a version where you can either shoot in RAW, like for Nikon it's NRAW, or ProRes. It's sort of like a broad perspective that you can use. But a flat profile basically means that you've just got more places to increase the dynamic range, and you've got more contrast to play with. So look at your local, your camera dealership, and then work out within that particular scope what that basically means. So again, it's a flat profile. It gives yourself somewhere to go afterwards in color grading. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned in your earlier high key shot that you find your fill first, and then you went onto your key. Is that something you usually do with your work?
Yeah, so whenever I'm shooting with strobes, guys, I know many of us get intimidated by flash photography, as in like in the studio. But what I do traditionally, if I'm doing with 3 lights, let's think of 3 lights. I grab the biggest light source I can possibly behind me. So for me, I normally use a Profoto B10 Plus X, but it could be any flash. So I have a big 7-foot octobox behind me. I could be standing in front of it, but it won't affect anything with the light coming in front of me. So what I do is I take a shot and I make sure I just get enough detail in that photograph. Then I turn that light off, I'm done. Then I get my backlight. I take a shot until I just get detail around the hair and the shoulders. I'm done, I turn that light off. Then I grab my main light, I take a shot until I'm happy with that exposure. Now, if you do things methodically based upon visual, like not doing it with a light meter, like literally saying, am I seeing detail in my fill? Am I seeing detail with my hair light? Am I getting the contrast ratio that I want with my main light? Then you turn all 3 on and you've got your exposure. It's just a less intimidating way to do it, and you get quick results. So why not start with a key? It's just a process, I guess. For me, I'm working chronologically, sort of like I want the key light to be last because that's the main one. So let me get the obvious ones done. Let me just get the fill light there where I get enough exposure, enough detail and shadows. That means I know that there's detail everywhere. On its own, it's a bad exposure. But with the main light there, I know that I've got detail anywhere that I want, and I can resurrect more detail in post-production. And then the same thing with the hair light. But that's my process, it just works. But do it by eye. That's the great thing about mirrorless and digital. You can see what you're doing and you can adjust accordingly. Yeah.
When you shoot video, do you always use 100% manual mode, or do you ever go to auto ISO?
I never use auto ISO. I find that it just becomes a very difficult process because if you are doing a one shot where you're going from indoors to outdoors, you may just want to have one of your focus rings to ISO. So you can manually adjust it as you go along. So depending on the camera system that you use, for example, the Nikon one, you can actually program those modes, those rings to adjust ISO accordingly. 100% manual. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was thinking of the the couple shot that you had over the pillow.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to figure out what exactly you're doing, if you're standing over them, if you're...
Yeah, I wanted to show that. I don't know if it was kosher to show a couple in bed, considering who we're representing here. But, so I had a rail, I had 2 long stands, and there was a rail, and the camera was directly bird's eye view. So I had to get that shot of the couple when they were young, and then when they're older at the exact same time. So I had to make sure that they're hugging in the same way, they have the same mannerisms, so you can feel that couple have grown older, and they have the same mannerisms as they got older. So that's how I did it. But it was press record, filming from above, and it was that emotional shot at the end where it sort of grabs you in and ties you in together. Yeah.
There will be a table right outside,
Yep.
creative production table, if you have any more questions for Jerry.
So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll see you again. Thank you so much. Thank you.